to order. This meeting is being recorded by the recording clerk, and Mr. Gant has a video. Is anyone else who wishes to record the meeting?
Yes.
He mentioned you did.
You get you.
Is there a sign-in sheet for our attendees?
Yeah.
Spell your name right.
You should just put your name on the top.
Kelly, when you get settled, we have updates on town meeting warrant articles?
I just am, the things that are really on my short list have to do with arranging a conference call for myself, the FinCom chairperson, and our staff to discuss some questions that have come up, particularly with regard to the citizens petition regarding the use of free cash. So I'm in the process of finalizing that. As chairman, I'll let you know when that date is so that if you can join us, you're welcome to.
I got a second email.
Oh, for
yeah.
So I'm just going to confirm that now.
So
Actually, I think it's been confirmed.
That was better than the first.
Okay.
What was confirmed?
I'm just trying to arrange, and also the
To Donnie
moderator.
Bristol.
No, this was about the $400,000 approach to debt service.
Right.
So I'm just questioning, we have some questions with regard to that we want to ask town council, just to make sure that we understand sort of what would be the impact of that if the FinCom's vote were not to be, or their recommendation was overruled.
And the recommendation is no action at this point?
I believe there's no action, but I wasn't able to touch base with Catherine. It's either recommendation pending further approval.
That's right, they didn't take
Right,
votes
so I
on
think
any
on
of them.
Monday
They have
they're
not.
gonna vote.
Okay. So
right now it's pending.
rather than talking about whether they override or not, if whatever happens at town meeting, it's approved, that's where the issue is, how we wind up handling that.
Correct.
And why is town council involved with it? I mean, I have no problem with it, but what are they helping us determine?
Just the way it's worded and what that would mean in terms of passage, if it were to pass as
Without any changes in wording?
Correct. So there were some questions that came up by the FinCom and the moderator, and we want to make sure, typically will do this with specific questions that might come up, is talking with town council so that everyone has the opportunity to ask, okay, if that, then what happens? Or if this, then how does that, or the fact that, as an example, when it talks about applying for debt service, does that specifically mean, principal and interest, whatnot?
I'm with you all the way. I've been concerned about it right along.
Okay.
So I think the thing that we might be looking for from town council is what amendments might be made to the wording to make it clearer of something. But again, I don't know what it means, what they're actually saying to do with it. So I agree, but perhaps town council could offer some amended wording that, if based on conversation going on during town meeting, it could be placed on this so that it is clearer in the long run as to what we're going to do, and everybody in the audience is clear as to
Well,
what
that really isn't our prerogative. That would have to be done on the floor. So
yes,
board.
absolutely. But I mean, to have something ready to go, perhaps, and it may not be that. It's very frustrating to me because I can't figure it out either as to what it would be. But it would seem to me that if we had one solid thing that we would do with it, if it's ready to pass, then that's something. It'll be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kelly, was FinCom coming up with a recommendation? Because I would imagine
They want to vote on Monday,
Okay.
pending some clarification with the call with town council.
Okay. Are they giving a recommendation for every citizen petition?
On Monday, I think, is what they were planning to do
Okay.
for Monday.
They specifically chose to not take votes at the last meeting on the 3 citizen petitions. Maybe they may have done one or something, said no votes on citizen petition, next meeting.
Okay, because I wasn't sure what the FinCom's role was relative to the zoning petition. I understand planning giving a recommendation. What's FinCom's perspective about a recommendation relative to the the zoning
The
bylaw
FinCom's
change.
required to give a recommendation on every article,
Okay,
regardless of the nature.
okay,
whether it's economic or not.
okay.
They will obviously talk planning and so on. Their recommendation will obviously be informed by those who are closer to it and have more understanding.
I didn't know if it was a financial perspective that they were providing, and I wasn't sure how that would tie in for the zoning.
Just one page, right?
Just one page I'm circulating right now. This is a draft list of our budget transfers under Article 3rd for budget transfers. This is the special town meeting. I will be refining this after today's meeting. Actually, I'll probably be refining it on Monday morning and then redistributing it because the town accountant is out this week on vacation. And she is also looking through every single one of these accounts and double checking and aligning which accounts go with which items. So, David, did you get one?
Yes, I did, thank
Okay.
you.
So I wanted, though, to give you an idea of what we're looking at this time. Some we've talked about already, and I just don't want this to be a surprise to anybody as on the 22nd, because I think on the 22nd, I'll probably be having a draft on the 22nd that just basically shows the normal one-pager that we provide is usually given the night of town meeting. I'm trying to beat that deadline so that on the 22nd, we can have a draft version available to both the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom. So there are 3 prior bills from FY18. They add up to $217, let's say. Those have been checked and rechecked, and they're ready to go as soon as we have a vote. These are typically bills that came in at the very end of the year and somehow weren't caught in time before the books were closed. We're catching them now. We just got to pay those and get them off the books. So more of a It's a little bit of semantics. We haven't seen these in a while, but now we just need to clean these up. And then, so apparently there is a deficit in the tree warden's budget because of the storm damage from this year and a lot of the trees that were taken down during the year. This might be a good opportunity to say that even though we're coming up with funding to cover the shortfall, that I've also been informed that we'll be receiving a FEMA reimbursement grant of, I think it's at least $20,000 or $30,000, $25,000. So that hopefully, when we receive that reimbursement, that'll show up in a future year's free cash.
Is that something we applied for, Kelly? or-
Yes, the fire chief, as the emergency management director, applies for that whenever we're eligible. The CAD training for both police and fire, there's a question. I just wanted to confirm and have confirmed that this training will be done before the end of the fiscal year. So this money will go directly into their budget for their training and personnel costs. But all of this will be off the books, will be covered, so it'll be transferred during special town meeting, and will be expended this fiscal year. And we do have the funding source for that. I believe we're using the Maya, one of the Maya funds to come up with the source for that. We have some smaller charges just to rectify our departmental budgets. In one particular, we have some BOS wages for the recording clerk and website support. These are some small dollar amounts, but we just need to really be reallocated from within existing funds. There's also a planning board advertising cost that we did not anticipate, but we have enough funding to cover that. And that's really because of actually in this particular case, when we got the citizens petitions regarding the zoning bylaw changes, we have to advertise those for 2 consecutive weeks. So the timing of that legal requirement meant that we had no choice but to place the ad in the Salem News instead of the Tri-Town. So that was an additional charge. So that was something that normally wouldn't happen, but it did, and we are just going to cover it just to clear up the books on that to make sure we can get that paid.
Why did they need to go into the Salem paper versus?
Because the Salem could offer it 2 weeks in a row in the advertising for public notice. And the timing was such that it needed to be done in a certain way and to advertise for the public hearing. So if we didn't advertise it in that publication, it would have thrown up the whole schedule.
So the timing of the Tri-Town was off?
Right.
It was a better timing.
Right. Can I help you?
Yeah. Is this the Board of Selectmen meeting?
Yes, it is.
I'm just Can I take notes on it for a Boy Scout merit badge?
Of course,
Oh,
you can.
absolutely,
Sure, come in and make
Have a
yourself
cigarette.
comfortable.
Thanks.
So that basically summarizes some of the departmental transfers, just to let you know, on Monday morning what I'll be doing, and I know Catherine's already working on this, but she's literally going through everyone's budget and making sure that the percentage and what they're doing and double checking to make sure. Sometimes at the year end, depending on whether you're hourly or salary, it might be off by some pennies. So she's just going through and double checking all of those accounts. So the only difference you might see in this is if there's some other allocations that we haven't identified, and I'll have those out to you. We'll work on it Monday morning. I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of it by noon time, so you'll have at least the afternoon to review it before the meeting at 7. Okay?
Kelly, what's the second BOS wages? The first one was recording clerk and website, and it's only $300.
Yeah, you know, I'm trying to, I think we were a little bit short in one of our accounts, and I can't remember off the top of my head what that is. If I can combine those two, I will. They'll be combined, but there'll be a specific description of that. I just, off the top of my head, I can't recall.
I have one
And as far
question,
as-
just out of curiosity, really. The water enterprise, number 9, so it says road repairs, but those were road repairs by the water department? I mean, it's not highway, right? So it's within the,
Yes,
so it's water to water, though it's not highway to water.
Correct.
So-
but it was for a water it was for an improvement project on those
Yeah.
streets, so it's using the
But
water enterprise
water's
funds.
In the end.
Water is paying for part of it and
Yeah.
highway's paying.
Oh, okay, thank you, that's what I was wondering, thank you.
So, going back to number 3.
Yeah, sorry, Leslie, no, you might
Is that
want to just
okay?
describe it a little differently, or add,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
it's a,
What do you,
someone else also says, it's the same thing, it's
water
enterprise, so,
improvements,
yeah, something with the word water in it.
yeah.
But
That's good, yeah.
what's in this published schedule, the STM, what is the title?
Say that?
What is the title in the warrant for that?
I think it does say road repairs.
That's what it says?
I think it does say road repairs.
Yeah, I don't
I think
really
so,
want
too.
to change what's the title in the warrant,
You could put it in-
because it could be confusing.
I don't care if you don't, but you can put it in parentheses. All right.
Double checking.
By the way,
So I'm just-
While she's doing that, Kelly, it's just this one thing, you mentioned 7 o'clock, you meant 6 o'clock meeting, it'll be ready for the 6 o'clock meeting.
Yes, yes, you're
Yeah,
right, there's a
right.
6
Yeah,
o'clock
yes.
prep.
Next.
It's road repairs.
Wait, no,
No, that's before the-
not
that's-
Monday,
that's
no.
not this Monday.
Yeah, let's clarify
Yeah,
it.
that's before this town meeting is.
Yeah, let's clarify that. This coming Monday on the 22nd, we have our meeting at 7 o'clock.
A regular.
Yes,
The 6 o'clock is
Oh, you're gonna
before
have
the
it
town
too.
meeting.
you're gonna have it for,
We're gonna have it on Monday, which is a week
I thought you
ahead
were
of when
talking
we need it to be.
Is this right here, that's just 85K, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's gonna be gone from my head.
Okay, just to be clear.
Okay, so we're back to, now these are just my definitions, I just categorize these. So there's 2 other sections of funds. And this is all detailed for my purposes. We'll have a different sheet that would look like Article 3rd, budget transfers. It's usually a 1-pager. It usually says, recommendation by the finance committee. And so I probably will just, scrub this a little bit more. But basically, there are 3 items that were originally on the capital list. For police portable radios, fire equipment, and radio repeaters, receivers. Those 3 expenses total $66,000. We're able to pay for that. I believe that we'll be using money from the savings from our 111F safety insurance. So that was the public safety insurance that we got to renegotiate. So we had some savings there. We're going to apply that to these safety expenses so that it'll offset any costs for those capital expenses.
Kelly, could you say, was this actually something that's going to be presented to people, or is this just a working document for us?
This is a working document for us. This is not going to be,
Presented anywhere?
no.
Okay.
I'm working on a separate document that you'll see on Monday that will say draft finance committee, proposed recommendations for Article 3rd.
Because I saw these other columns, I don't know what those numbers
Yeah,
are.
no, don't
Those will
even,
be gone.
that's just from last year and the year before, that's all.
And so those are transfers also, it's from
Everything's
this
a
111
transfer.
insurance, but it's a transfer.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
And
the
so what
list,
are the
you'll
col-
see where it's coming from and where it's
Right.
going to.
So what is the 48,
This is the 3rd year of
500,
buying.
what are the other columns then?
So the other columns are just showing where we've, like, for
That's what she spent in the
equipment, last year and the
previous
year
2
before.
years.
So the
This
previous,
is-
that's what we spent, this is FY,
That's right. This,
that's right.
the
So-
$20,000 is the last payment of 3.
18,
It's
19.
actually,
Got it.
it's the second to the last payment. What we did, instead of spending 40,000 this
Oh.
year, we're splitting it 2020.
Okay.
So we'll have one more year, we're splitting it so that we can
Okay.
just use 20 this year, and then we'll do the rest next year. And then finally, on this section of the transfers, we have the servers, we're gonna be able to fund, the Stewart School's floor scrubber, and map storage equipment and labor. All of those items, I can't recall what exact source they're coming from, but we did allocate, or we're able to identify a funding source to cover those expenses. If you recall, these are all taken from the capital list, and sort of just, we're using basically tailings in order to pay for those. The property liability insurance coverage, that's the other potential source for some of these, as well as, I think that there was about 22,000 in the pension budget line, and then a portion of this might be coming from health insurance tailings as well. So all of that is sort of coming together with this, you know, to fund these items. Any questions on that before I go to the final warrant, 4 through 10? Okay. Employee compensation study. Now, I know the FinCom did vote to recommend no action on this. It's still on the warrant, and it's still something that if I were able to talk with Karen, I would ask if they wanted to, if they were willing or wanted or interested in revisiting that one more time before they finalize a recommendation, or if they're gonna stick with their original recommendation. I did leave it on here because it's already on the warrant. I also left it on here because I do still feel strongly that this is a worthwhile and justifiable expense, given that it's been at least 5 years since we did the last study. The purpose of this wouldn't be to justify giving people additional raises or upgrades. The purpose of this would be to basically to analyze what have we done since 5 years ago? Are we in line with the market? Are we above? Are we in the middle? Are we right where we wanted to be? It's really an assessment, and this is typical that you would do this maybe every 5 years. We would basically be looking at our comparable communities to see how are we paying on that median, and really just have an outside professional come in to do that will make it much easier for us to answer questions that were coming up this year about, you know, is this a sustainable model? Is the pay grid reasonable? Is it comparative to our neighbors? And so that's really why I recommended this and why it's on there. And I'm not quite sure, I haven't gone to the meeting, I wasn't at the meeting where they made this vote. I did get the sense from the chairperson that she might be willing to bring it up again. I just don't know if the rest of the FinCom has, you know, was definitive about that, or if they're willing to talk about it. But in any case, it's still on here, and I will be bringing that up with her to find out if there's been any change in their recommendation after Monday night. The Police Chief Search and Assessment Center, I used 10,000, that's what we funded it for. You know, we did this with the fire department, the fire chief. You know, potentially it could cost more, but I think 10 is the number that we need to be able to reach for when we're ready to start this process. And then finally, the school security and surveillance system. I think this is where we're using some of the health insurance tailings, is to help pay for the school security system for 85,000. If you recall, there's another one. The other one is in the annual town meeting warrant for 85. We had to split it to make sure we had enough funding to pay for both.
And did the reference between, this is special town meeting, the other is annual town meeting, is there a reference, as we talked about, in each of those
Yes.
to the other half being in the other warrant, okay?
Yes,
Just to make that clear to folks.
yeah. We did add that to the explanation
Good.
after
That's
last
great,
meeting.
excellent, thank you.
There was maybe one slight tweaking of the wording because I had heard from the superintendent, and he had stated what he had stated, the way it was worded before was that Middleton and Boxford were in the process of doing it or something, but he tweaked the wording a little bit more. He said that Middleton is currently installing it, and Boxford is in the process of installing the same system. So it was a minor tweak of one of the sentences, but just so you're aware of that, if you see it's different from what we approved. And then finally, we have the water enterprise funds. These, we're revoking, we're rescinding, we're getting those off the books, so to speak. But then we're also, rather than borrowing the full amount that was authorized last year for the water project, a portion of that will be used out of the, basically the water enterprise free cash or retained earnings to pay for the water improvements for Prospect and River Road. All of those have been voted by the water commissioners. So those are pretty much just an effort to clean up some of our prior year votes. Finally, there's about a $400 difference in our PEG cable funds, and because that's a separate, I was originally, I think the last time I came to you, I had said that we would cover that under departmental transfers. We had the chance to clarify because it is a separate fund. The the town accountant felt that it should be a separate warrant article. So that's why it's segregated here, but it's a small amount of money. It's really just to make sure we're covering all of our expenses in this fiscal year. And that's pretty much the rundown of all of the transfers that we're aware of at this moment.
Acknowledging it's only $400, and I certainly don't want to change something if it's inconsistent with the prior document, but the wording doesn't make sense. The transfer from reserve from, I don't know.
Yes,
How to
okay.
be, maybe one of the froms is a
Yep.
4 or something.
Yep. Transfer from reserve.
Not a big deal.
Transfer, I'll just change it on, yeah, that's not weird. Reserve for appropriation, that's what it is. All right, thank you. Good eye. Okay.
What else you got on the town?
So, honestly, I don't have anything else on our other warrants. I mean, everything that was in here was what was voted. At the time we went to print, we went to print, we're ahead of schedule, we got it in the mail. Thanks to Donna and Debbie, we're able to get this mailed at least a week and a half ahead of time to everyone, so everybody should have received it in their mail. What days did you receive it? Do you recall, or have you heard from anyone?
Oh,
At least a
I
week
have-
ago.
Yeah,
I feel like.
mine
You haven't got one?
a little less than a week ago.
I brought it to the post office on Thursday.
Really?
Thursday?
Yeah, I got mine Friday or Saturday.
Look at that.
Uh-oh,
I won't take it personally.
don't,
Yeah.
we'll get the postmaster.
Actually, they can't find Meadowview.
No, that's probably
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, what did you do to upset the postmaster, Mark?
I give him a gift every Christmas.
Apparently it's not big enough.
There we go.
Yes, no, I just need to thank everybody for your support and your collaboration for this year's warrant. We have a great team, and I feel like we were ahead of schedule. We got this done in a reasonable time. We got back everyone's feedback. Lynn, your extra set of eyes, Dick, your extra set of eyes, and just having these meetings to help move the process along was really helpful. And of course, Debbie and her keen eye, it all just sort of worked together. I was really glad that we could. I kept asking them, okay, have you gone to prison yet? So just make sure you come home. Make sure they let you leave. But everything was done on time, and so I was really thankful for that, and just hoping that this allows us some extra time to get ready for the big day and make sure we're prepared for the town meeting. So, of course, the override was the other question. I've heard through the moderator that he's hearing some whispers about folks who might want to suggest some sort of amendment. I've asked him to participate in the call with KP Law so that he has the opportunity to vocalize, what he's heard or what he's thinking might come up on the floor. So we'll have that conversation before Monday's meeting, and if we need to, I'll arrange a separate meeting in addition to that if necessary, and then I'll be working with him and the town clerk on any logistics and in particular preparation for the 30th, the moderator forum on the 30th, and then I'll be, touching base with the town clerk to make sure we don't have any issues for town meeting night. Little things too. I don't know if I haven't heard of whether or not there's a plan to provide any, children's activities or any of that. I just know that was kind of a surprise one time. We want to try to, and then also something as simple as like water. I mean, it was really hot out one of those years, and I can't remember how the water just miraculously, like, just appeared.
Fire
How that-
department, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
They were
So-
passing it out.
So little things like that we wanna make sure are all ready to go. And then, of course, one related to that, one other thing that people have asked about is, we have in fact got a reservation, and granted, the board has to decide the location of a town meeting, but we have, just for your information, we've booked the Masco Auditorium for the next, I think, 5 years. So ultimately, that's the board's decision where we hold that, but we've taken the, we've done the work to make sure it's reserved.
And that's for the 2 nights, the reserves.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
essentially 10 days, because it's over 5 years,
Yeah.
10 days worth. Yeah.
So that's all I have, unless you have any specific questions for me on the warrant.
Would we vote on that prior to the town meeting so that we could announce?
No, I wouldn't think so, because I think that authority lies with the board, with the then sitting board for that year, or I would
Right,
question that.
right, that's
anyway.
true. When
You
you
do
do
it
the
early in
warrant.
the year and announce it.
That you could do it the first meeting, but I wouldn't do it with a prior board. Anything else on these items? I'm gonna sort of do a point of order myself here. And the first thing I'll do is note that there was only one member of the public present at the beginning of the meeting, and that member is still here. We've been joined by one more. I've just realized that there is two-sided paper here on today, which is not my personal preference. So what I should have done at the beginning of the meeting, and I apologize, was to state that it was our intention to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, capital A, under Exemption 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, specifically to discuss and negotiate the town administrator's employment agreement, since an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the government's bargaining position. The board will not return to regular open session. Okay, then now we're back to moving ahead on the agenda. We are talking about the 2020 meeting schedule.
That meeting schedule is in board docs.
The meeting schedule?
Yeah, it is in board docs.
That help me know what's going on.
Now, what was the date that you had mentioned was a conflict with a fire retirement party or something?
Well, that was in May, actually, that's
It
not
was
even
in
on this
May.
one.
It is
So has
in
that been
May.
resolved, or is that still a conflict? Or?
It's still a conflict, but I mean, if the meetings are generally, that first meeting is generally abbreviated, and we would get together just to vote on the reorganization of the board. I think the event starts at 6, the meeting's at 7, so if the meeting were short enough, we'd still have time to go over to the, to the retirement party after that.
What's the,
May
That is
13th.
May 13th.
Where is the party, Cal?
It's at Commons,
And what time is that?
6 PM is when it starts.
Were they looking for a proclamation similar to what had been done for
You
the
know what,
others?
yes, we typically would, so we'll probably just work with the chief to put one together for that.
So we'd go to that and then come back here at 7 o'clock, or we switch around?
I think, I was guessing you would meet first and at 7 and then go there after.
But if that is starting at 6 o'clock,
That's-
the fireworks will be over, and
That's why I brought it up as a conflict,
we'll show up
so-
just in time to watch the last of the dance. I'm just,
The open bar will be closed by then.
a possibility from my point of view, if it is a short agenda, is to see whether the board would be able, because there's only one seat open, and our friend over here is running for it, chances, I don't think there's any So probably gonna be the same folks, so the question is, would we want to?
Don't take anything for granted in this town.
Don't take
Not
anything for
at all.
granted. But all I'm just trying to think is whether we could potentially reschedule that for
We
before
could
the
start
celebration.
early or do the reorganization at the following meeting, which would be May 20th? No, there isn't one on the,
No, not the
There's
20.
no,
Oh,
13th was the only
okay.
one posted,
Next one's the 27th.
and that's Memorial Day.
the 27th.
Yeah, I do not have a
Meeting that
We
Yeah,
don't
the
day.
next
have,
one is the
we don't
third.
have one on the 27th, that's right.
We had a tentative one for the 20th, but that's not happening.
That- Nothing's been decided.
Okay, so we have I have on my calendar here a tentative meeting on May 20th, Monday, as well as the sort of scheduled one on the 13th, the week before. So one possibility would be to just, if there's only one meeting that month, then just make it the second one instead of the first.
The 20th.
That's what I would recommend.
Is everyone available on Monday, the 20th at 7 o'clock?
I am.
I am.
Well, I think I will be. I have a work schedule now, you know, so.
Oh, I heard.
And I had,
You're one of us.
and I haven't seen my May schedule yet, so.
Sure that you take a little break.
Actually, it doesn't matter anyway, because it's a night meeting, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be fine. They don't play golf in the dark, so.
Dick, will you be available on the 20th? Or do you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just March.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, as I said, I don't take anything for granted. It'd probably be just a good idea, whatever's decided that
If
you
you-
middle it around, you know what I'm saying?
If by some chance you were to be reelected, would you be available?
Hypothetically speaking.
Yes.
You see, the Italians have I understand they have a concept about jinxing things, you know?
Yeah.
So the Jewish people have a word called the Kenahara. So, you know, you don't put a Kenahara on anything.
So I guess the question under the rephrase is, would you have any issues with the rest of the board
No.
meeting on the 20th?
I
Oh,
wish you a
perfect.
great evening. And also, so whatever it turns out, just make sure after town meeting you circulate it with your message.
So do we need to vote to change that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are.
We're doing the 20th instead of the 13th, right?
Correct,
Is that right? Okay.
correct. Well, that makes that easier.
That means you can have more fun at the parties.
Yes, we all can.
One second. Okay. Anything else for the meeting schedule?
Because there's nothing, there's no work session in May, and looking ahead, there's not one in June, but that's up to you, because I.
You really should, again, I'm not trying to be substantive, you should do that with the new board as constituted, should set up
Yeah.
schedules.
Or just leave it as.
Just leave it as
for
is.
now.
Okay.
So the firefighters' retirement party is at 6 p.m.
6 PM.
That's the 13th, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Kelly Town Hall summer hours?
Yes, I am inquiring as to the board's inclination to continue to close on Fridays during the summer months. I have heard from a couple of different people and wanted to give the board a couple, an option. What we've done in the past is we have closed on Friday morning. We have opened an additional hour to the public Monday through Thursday. So rather than close at 4 Monday through Thursday, we would close at 5 p.m. We would stay closed on Friday. So that's how we've done it in the past. Someone had suggested that maybe we could have one late night. And so in that case, I just came up with an alternative, depending on the board's inclination as to whether or not you felt that having one night of town hall open to replace that Friday morning.
I would like to try that. That might be
Interesting.
something in the longer term. We might, if there's positive response to it, that might be something that serves the town on a year-round basis. How we do that, not for discussion now, but I think the key would be to publicize it adequately and try it out, because there are people who come back from work who might choose to come back. So my preference would be to try that.
one other advantage to the Monday night, late night is, especially for folks like us who are working, you're here anyway for the meeting, you know, it might be an opportunity to overlap your listening sessions in between, or just to allow people, you know, that Monday would be the day that we'd be open anyway, make sure our offices are open. But it's also the same night that, you know, FinCom or Board of Selectmen meets. We just thought that maybe this would be a good opportunity to pilot something different or new, and just, I don't have, no stake in it either way, I just wanted to have a quick discussion about it so we can start planning for that. Depending on your.
Some of the implications are greater than an 8-hour day on that particular day. First of all, we have the effect on the people. Does everybody, you mentioned one person or several people?
Maybe 2
The
or
question
3
is-
have mentioned it.
How many?
Maybe 2 or 3
2.
people said,
And so
hey,
the
what if
question
we
is,
did
out
one
of
more
25
day?
people in the town hall, and what do the others think? The second thought is it's a great idea, as you point out, to be able to be open, but the open probably doesn't affect everybody. In other words, I'm not sure it's important for Sue to be here, Sue Winslow, I'm just picking one person. Whereas the town clerk, it might be extremely helpful because someone's trying to get a license or whatever else. Or maybe somebody wants a building permit, but on the other hand, we have part-time people for building permits, you know, so that the inspector's not gonna go out. So I think there's a bit of thought we need to put into what we really would do with that extra few hours and the effect on people working more than an 8-hour day.
Well, I think in general, from the people I've spoken to, I think there's a general appreciation that, you know, having that Friday morning off is really a great benefit over the summer. They look forward to, you know, they don't mind working the extra hour each day, if knowing that that 4 hours on Friday, they don't have to spend, you know, 30 minutes driving in. And so it's really just a preference. I mean, you're gonna have the same people who are used to leaving at 4 say, oh, then 1 more hour until 5. There are some people who just feel like they'd rather get it over with in one night and then, you know.
I don't think the close on Fridays is as much of an issue based upon the
Yeah.
last year's experience.
No.
I think it's between whether we extend
One
every
late
day
night.
or we have one later night and
Right.
lesser later on the others.
So in order to deal with that issue though, instead of saying, okay, Monday night's gonna be the night we're gonna make it for 4 hours, that I felt was going to be too long, and that's why I suggested that we would maybe stay open till 6:30 p.m. and then till 4:30 the rest of the week. So we do an extra half an hour, you know, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and rather than make all those 4 hours up on a Monday, that it would just go till 6:30.
The people you heard from, Kelly, were they employees or people, residents?
Employees.
They're employees who were
Yes.
asking for this.
Well, one person, well, Paula wouldn't be shy about saying it. She just said, well, you know, maybe doing it one night would be better, and try it just to see how it goes. But you're gonna get different opinions, so that's why I wanted to sort of see what the board had to say.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we were getting that request from residents, that they would find it helpful as opposed to,
Yeah, no, I mean,
so there's no
in
demand.
general,
you
Friday
know-
mornings are dead except for, you know, maybe composting permits, which.
No,
I'll
not
try to
Friday
update.
morning, just doing what we've done in the past, the 8 to 5,
Mhm.
Monday through Thursday, versus doing the one late day on Monday. So
Right.
I didn't know if you're finding that the residents are saying it's really tough to get there
No.
by
not
4
really.
o'clock.
I think
No,
there'd
so
be a
there's no
stretch.
demand.
Yeah, I haven't come into that.
Well, I think Dick's right, it's worth looking a little bit at impacts on all the different departments and so on, and just making sure that there's a plan that's gonna make that useful. If there's somebody who's gonna be here but nobody's ever gonna see them that late because it's not sort of a duty they have, does it work for them as well as for those who might have a window open that the public will come to? So I think checking on those probably is a good idea, but
Okay.
again, I'll reiterate my sense that if we could do an open evening once a week, it would be interesting. So I think Monday's probably as good as any because a lot of folks may vacations and so on, why not?
Mhm.
It's, I think that, you know, in a related perspective, but if we're saying that we have an open night, we have to have an open night. It gets crazy if you're an open, like I think you were saying about the, you know, if the clerk's open, but the permit place isn't open, but this one is, but that one isn't.
Yeah, so I think it's a balancing, but
If you're
not
gonna
a
be
split.
open, you need to be, I don't say without some except, but pretty, from the resident's point of view, you need to be open functionally if you're gonna do
Right.
that. Or be clear that you're not. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, I mean, I guess that's a good point. I think this year it's different from years past when we had like Board of Health, CONSCOM, building inspections, because building inspections has always been closed on Friday. In this case, you'd still be closed on Friday, and maybe, and you still have a part-time person, so these hours, extra hours wouldn't even impact building services. However, you're gonna have everybody in that office. Sue is working 34 hours, so she's going to be there. Even if somebody from the building inspections department isn't there, she'll be there to get the person's questions and fill out their forms and leave them for the proper people. So I think that there's less of an issue of, just because they're all consolidated now. And that was the intention when we try to design the office that way, that everybody's sort of overlapping. So I don't see it as much of an issue as it might have been in a prior year when everybody was sort of in their silo, just taking care of, you know, CONSCOM or Board of Health or building. It's a little bit
Yeah,
more
but even up-
integrated now.
yeah, definitely. But even up like I think there's an internal here later, and then there's an open.
Mhm.
You know, so if I'm
Yeah.
hearing you're open and I wanna pay a tax bill,
Yeah,
then the treasurer or the collector needs to
Right.
be there. If the collector's closed, but the clerk's open,
no, it would be all or nothing, which is why I'm phrasing it this way, and I'm gonna try to stay consistent with. We're either all staying open till 5 o'clock Monday through Thursday, or we're gonna all stay open till 6:30 on Monday and 4:30 Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Because if we give too many options, it'll get too confusing, too chaotic, it defeats the whole purpose of trying to just simply, you know.
That work out all
replace
right
those
for you?
hours.
Yeah, kind of hard to keep up, but it's all right.
And we feel that way too sometimes.
Hey,
If you want to-
good
My
night.
time.
Kelly, do any other town halls, stay open late on one night a week?
Yeah, it's a mix. Like in Belmont, we used to stay open one night, and we used to do the same thing. That's kind of when we first came up with the idea. They closed during the summer hours. And actually, a lot of towns have tried staying open late, and then nobody shows, and then they're like looking at each other. In our case, like we wouldn't be looking at each other. I'd be like, okay, let's get these projects done and get these files done. And summertime's usually a better time to get ahead of some of the projects you've been putting off.
I would think that that would be a slower time for people. A lot of people leave.
But so is Friday morning too, you know, so.
Yeah,
Friday's-
Friday, I don't think there's any question, it's just
Yeah.
whether you're staying open longer on Monday versus having it consistent.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people leave in the summer, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that it's gonna be busy.
Yeah, no, it really isn't, which is why I think that this is such a great, you know, benefit for us to be able to offer the employees, because they really appreciate it. I always hear that they do appreciate it, and I always say, make sure you know, let folks know that you do appreciate this, because, and quite honestly, I mean, as personnel director, sometimes it brings up more issues for me, but I think all in all, it makes for a nicer, you know, something to look forward to in the summer. You know, that you don't have to drive in on a Friday morning. And for the most part, it's also good for folks like us when we have to get caught up on some work or some of the filing, or website, and be able to have that one day where you can come in and not, excuse me, not be worried about people coming in from the outside. So it tends to be a good down day.
So this is an administrative decision, but one you are sharing with us for our feedback and support.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a vote on that? Okay.
No vote necessary, just wanted to engage things.
I just have a question before we go on the FY 2020 meeting schedule. There was a possible motion that was included in board docs. Should we vote on that or not?
It was my suggestion that the sitting board at that time.
That we let
Vote for
let
their-
them vote for
their
their
schedule.
whole meeting, their schedule,
We'll
okay?
postpone that.
Just kind of respect.
Yep.
And that's great. Debbie wanted to make sure we got on that so that
Yep.
everyone would
No,
have the
that's fine, there's
opportunity.
nothing wrong with
That's
that.
great.
We'll just defer that and put that on that following meeting.
Before we go to minutes, I'm gonna skip it, so.
And when you do, why don't we put the May one on, so we'll be voting for it before May, so put the May 3rd, the 20th on. Just add it to the beginning of the
Yeah, because
I think we
it
just
starts
voted
in
on it.
June. We'll just
Right,
add the
voted on it.
meeting
We talked
on it.
consensus.
Do we have something to discuss about the Board of Health and Transition or not?
Yes, well, I just wanted to give the board an update. There's no official vote necessary, I just want to keep everybody in the loop. It's not a personnel matter at all, it's really just an issue of me as personnel director and town administrator. You know, in fairness to the goals that you set for this board, but also for me, one of the items was to look at potential efficiencies and potential regionalizing of certain services. I had made a recommendation to the Board of Health, had met with them, didn't leave here probably, I don't know, what time did we leave? 10:15 or so last night? It was a late one, and it went on much later than after we left. I had suggested that we would, rather than post the position as 40 hours full-time, that we would post it at either 30, 32, or 34 hours. I had suggested that rather than assume that the one-size-fits-all prototype that we've been using for the past how many years, that we should be using this opportunity of John's retirement to look at other possible opportunities for, you know, really segmenting out some of the jobs, because public health has such a vast array of different topics and subjects and tasks and responsibilities that, to me, when I looked at the numbers from the town report, and this was from last year's town report, this was from FY17, I was looking at the numbers saying, you know, I mean, over 200 items here are from septic alone. And I know that there's a lot of foot traffic in the department, and I thought, you know, what did we do with septic issues way back when? So as I was going through a transition memo, trying to outline what our transition steps would be for the for the health agent, you know, looking at these numbers, I said, you know, maybe there's a way that we can segregate out some of the septic and environmental review piece, and maybe use that as an opportunity to, you know, instead of posting the position at 40 hours, maybe we could do 32 hours, Monday through Thursday, 8-hour days. It would allow a potential applicant to have a 3-day weekend, but have full benefits. That we could take that additional 8 hours, we could use 4 of that to bring in an outside sewer or an environmental engineer to deal with the septic issues. They could have office hours a couple of days a week. And that we could also then enhance the number of hours that Sue is working, because I know that Sue does a lot of the lifting in that position, which made it look almost seamless for most people who saw John getting what he did. It was because of her success in her position and her being able to prep everything for him. So I saw it as an opportunity to suggest a way that we could perhaps, and Sue's at 34 hours right now. I thought, well, maybe if we could get her another 4 hours, if we could get 4 hours from an engineering person, and we could segregate some of that Septic 5 title review, that would allow us sort of an ability to start at 32 hours and to really look at what does the position entail, and is 40 hours a week necessary. It's my personal opinion that we do not need a public health agent for 40 hours each week. The Board of Health disagreed with me. They took a vote last night. They want to fill the position at 40 hours a week. You know, I'm not here to, you know, pick a fight or try to set a battle, but I think it's my job and responsibility to identify where there's opportunity for us to be not only more efficient and more effective, but also if there was some savings along the way. So I asked if the Board of Health, if they wanted to come to today's meeting to explain sort of their position. I am ready to post the position at 40 hours a week if that's, you know, the will. I don't need a vote of the board, but I just thought it would be important as the executives for the town, before I post this position, that you understood sort of their position and their perspective on why they believe that 40 hours is necessary. And we'll just go ahead with the status quo, the way that we've always hired for the position. And I would suggest that after we may get past this point, we post the position, that I would possibly be working more with them and with this board to more clearly define and clarify the reporting structure, the supervisory structure, because with this new person comes a new opportunity for us to look at the responsibilities, but also the fact that you as a board appoint the Board of Health. They name the agent, but it's actually us or me and you that funds the position, pays the position, and I just wanted to make sure that we all had the opportunity to talk with them about the potential opportunity that only comes when you have you know, some retirement or some change in staffing. So I had talked with them last night about some of those ideas. Like I said, Dick was actually there. We had left around 10:15, and I said, you know, you've sort of heard my position and what I think could be a potential. I also suggested that there might be a potential that even if there was the need for more hours, that we could start at 32 and then work up from there if necessary, or could even be looking at some other regional approaches. They feel, and respectfully so, that the need is for a 40-hour position, and I will respect that, even though I would have recommended for 32 or even 34 hours a week. But with that, I wanted them the opportunity just to answer any questions that you might have for them before I post the position, and we go forward with the hiring process. So that's really why I asked Debbie to put this on the calendar today for you. Because I think this was a chance to sort of, and I think there was a good discussion about, you know, some of the benefits and opportunities, and Dick, I didn't know if you had anything to add, but I just didn't feel that I should move forward without there being an acknowledgement of the discussion and some of the pros and cons that were discussed, because I really did feel that this could have been an opportunity to do something a little bit different. But again, as the Board of Health, they did vote formally to go ahead with posting a 40-hour position.
I think, as you point out, there was a lot of discussion that went on amongst the Board of Health. So it is not a matter that the Board of Health came down and said, this is what we want, and that's it. Apparently they had mixed ideas and trying to figure out what. But as it came, as a group, apparently, I didn't know what happened after I left, but they talked, and you know after that?
I
don't know what
talked
happened
with
after that
Sue
either.
just told me they voted on the 40 hours.
Oh, they did, okay, so, and I don't know how late it went, but you indicated it long, so
Midnight
this is not
yeah.
a frivolous sort of thing. They put a lot of time into it. That doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but it's not that it was a fait accompli, and they actually were looking at the different models. One thing I will say that it's worth it for us to read. Cheryl Knudsen wrote a paper on it. It's well written about what the Board of Health does. It's a nice treatise on the Board of Health. So I think it's interesting for all of us. And it will, of course, be in their minutes because it was part of their meeting. But we should get a copy of that somehow, I think
she was going to bring it today.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
she is. But
She's here now.
I'm saying we ought to get an electronic copy for the board to read at some point.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah. Great. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
We
Come
had
on
like
in.
4 because I thought,
That's
is
okay.
are members of the public allowed?
Of course.
yes.
Oh, my goodness
Yeah,
gracious.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's not executive session or
Your
anything.
timing's
No,
It's just
perfect.
open.
Yeah.
So Kelly, I just look back to you as to both extend or happy to have Cheryl address us if that's what it is.
Sure, yeah, well, I don't know how much you just overheard. I was
A
just
little bit.
trying
Mhm.
to sort of, and Dick was too to some point, really just trying to fill in the board in some of the dialogue that has happened, some of the considerations that we've been talking about in terms of John's retirement, how we're gonna post the position and how many hours. You know, clearly we had a difference of opinion about what that should be. But I do know, and you can confirm, that there was a vote to keep it at 40 hours. And so before I go and post that, I just wanted the board to be aware that the dialogue did happen, that there was a discussion about some of the pros and cons and benefits of doing, you know, a reduced work week and sort of a, you know, more strategic allocation of the resources. But ultimately, if you did decide the 40 hours, that I just wanted the board to be involved, since they are the appointing agents for the Board of Health, that, you know, there was a lot of thought and discussion that went into, you know, my recommendation, but also your rationale for, or your board's rationale. So I just wanted them to have the opportunity, or for you to maybe address it, or if they have any questions for you before we move forward with the formal posting. So that's really was my intent and goal for having you come to today's meeting, and really just to talk about it. I also mentioned that one of the goals of the Board of Selectmen was to look at potential efficiencies within the various departments and not take for granted that the way we've always done things is the way we need to continue to move. And that I think that you and I have had some discussions about, you potential opportunities, that with a retirement becomes, you have the opportunity to step back and look at what you have, what you need, and where you can perhaps strengthen. So with that, I just wanted to allow the board to ask you any questions or for you to speak so that I can move forward with my process and we can start to, get that position filled as soon as possible.
So, thank you, Kelly, and that's right, we did have a long meeting last night, we got done at 11 o'clock. I don't know what time you left, but we continued to deliberate until 11 o'clock. And I just want to say, I'm reading a book in a book group, it's called Healing the Heart of Democracy, and it's about having conversations, you may have heard. And one of the points in the book is, and I did bring this up at the meeting because we were really struggling, is that no one has the truth, there are multiple truths. And so I said, this is what we see here, there are multiple truths in the situation, and so the problem comes when people can't or don't want to talk about it. And then what happens is relationships are broken, and that's the worst thing that can happen. So we want to maintain relationships, we don't want to break anything. We want to respect each other's truth, and then we did that last night, and I'm sure we'll do it again now. So I had prepared remarks, I spiffed them up a little since last night. And I have to read them because I'm really not a good extemporaneous speaker. But so thank you for inviting me here today. Jerry Topping plans to come, but he's in traffic. He may make it or not. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts about the vision for our next health agent. As chairperson, I'm representing the 5 members of the Topsfield Board of Health. Collectively, we bring to the board 5 lifetimes of expertise in nursing, medicine, and engineering. We're dedicated and committed to protecting and continuously improving public health in Topsfield. In short, we care very much about local public health. The Board of Health agent retired as of April 11th. Over the past 5 days or so, the town administrator and I have been patching together a cadre of alternate health agents who will fill in until a new permanent health agent can be hired. Previously, the board, with the town administrator's input, had developed an updated job description. The next step is to write the job posting notice, post it internally and externally